we'll get started.
Biggie.
Call to order the full city council meeting for September 19th, 2018. For those who are at home and those in the audience, we are starting late tonight because we had an executive session with regards to some legal matters. We are out of executive session. The clerk will call the roll and record who's in attendance.
Anderson Burgos. Bartley.
Here.
Bresnahan.
Here.
Leahy.
I'm present.
LeBron Martinez.
Here.
Lisi. McGee.
Present.
McGivern.
Here.
Roman. Sullivan.
Here.
Tommen.
Here.
Bacon. Here. Valentin.
Here.
All rise for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
The city of Holyoke.
And the city council.
Councilor Anderson Burgos will be a little late. He did email in and text in that he is caught up at work, but he'll be here shortly. Councilor Lisi will not be in attendance tonight due to the holiday that she is observing. And Councilor Nelson emailed in and texted in to myself that he is feeling under the weather and he will not be in attendance, just so we know where everyone is. With that, I would like to make a motion to go out of order to 14B, which is the Committee on Development and Government Relations.
Your motion
If that's possible.
Motion to take up 14E.
Motion is go out of order to 14B. All those in favor? All those
Aye.
opposed? This was a request that we go out of order to take up the Riding Street, the reservoir issue. Because there are some people
I'm having problems.
in attendance who have a timeline and would like to have the information that the committee provided in order to report on it. So with that, this is Committee on Development and Government Relations, to whom was referred, in order that the committee be informed to study the future and make recommendations on the future use of the Whiting Reservoir. In excess of $1.5 million in repairs and upgrades to the dam and spillway are needed. The state will soon order that the water level be drawn down 6 feet. The committee should include a member of the Water and Conservation Commission, OPED, abutting stakeholders, and the city councilor. Considered the same as recommended that the order has been complied with, signed off by Bartley, Valentin, and Tallman.
Well, can we suspend the rules to take 14B and 14C as a package?
14B and C, yeah, we can.
Second.
Absolutely. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 14C is the Committee on Redevelopment, so it was referred in order that the Water Commission and department heads meet with the council to discuss update issues regarding Ashley and Whiting Reservoir tax abatements, or that was complied with as well. Signed off once again by Bartley, Valentin, and Tallman. I'll turn it over to the chair, Councilor Bartley.
Well, let me make a motion. The motion's to receive the committee report.
Motion is to receive, and that was complied with. Under discussion.
Second.
Okay, well, I wish the chair had advised me that we're doing this right away, but that's okay. So, just point of order, why are we doing this so early? Just so
There was a request. I received an email request. I do believe the email went out to everyone else. I didn't
Yeah.
see if anyone was missed, but if you were missed, then that, we apologize.
I didn't
for
get
that.
an email. So, all right. And who made the request? Just so-
There is hopefully I say it right, Kimmy May, am I saying that right? From the student reporter at the Holyoke Sun, if I'm saying that correctly. She had been emailing me for beginning of the week, and then an email today to all of us with regards to this. You didn't? Okay.
Mr. President, I'm not challenging you. I'm just saying that person is not present right now. I'll tell you that.
That's under,
so,
I was
she-
asked, I
so
said
she-
I would make the motion. It has been approved by the full body. If there's a report on it, that's what they were looking for.
Okay. We had an excellent discussion with the committee before us. We had the manager David Conti, and one of the commissioners, Mark Nadorf. And these are, I think as this body knows, these are long-term veterans of the Holyoke Waterworks. So we're very lucky to have their expertise with the city. So there was a great deal of data that was reviewed, Mr. President. I could happily summarize. I'll summarize what I can here at this point. So in my notes, the reservoir in question has been offline since 1997. That's pursuant to Mr. Conti. The issue that started this is the cost that would be incurred relative to repair of the dam. In this order, it says $1.5 million. We were advised by Mr. Conti the estimated cost is $2 million. I think if we read, and I received in today's mail, the minutes of the waterworks from July 16th, as well as minutes from July 23rd, the waterworks is facing an estimate of high priority projects valued at $11.8 million, medium priority projects valued at $6.9 million, and other projects valued at $5.3 million. The dam is within the high priority part of $11.8 million. And those numbers are generated by Dave Pinsky at Ty and Bond. So that just puts into a larger context. There's a lot of financial issues facing the waterworks. Where these funds are going to come from, whether they're bonding or whether it's free cash or whether it's stabilization or whether it's some other revenue source is an open question at this point. The interesting part about the meeting, and you read that and you compare it, I'm so glad I had these minutes, Mr. President. You compare what was said in the meeting to what was noted in these really excellent minutes that the waterworks continually produces. It's almost like you're sitting in the room, and that's how great those minutes are. You compare what was said in the meeting before us at DGR last week, and in the minutes, there's a bit of a, it's hard to put them in line. But what was said before us is that there seemed to be some openness from at least Mr. Nadorf relative to the issue that we raised about maybe making Whiting Reservoir a more community-friendly entity. As you know, Mr. President, there's still a lot of restrictions. It's regularly policed. I mean, people can walk their dogs there, but there's a lot of other restrictions because, in theory, it still is a drinking water supply source, though it's been offline since '97. But I sense that there was a bit of openness to possibly using Whiting Street Reservoir as again a community resource. One of the really good points raised by the commissioner is what are the legal requirements relative to closing a dam. There were several other questions and comments raised by the manager that were really on point and helpful. I think that in the why I want to take both these orders up at the same time, one of the things that we really want to talk about down the road is possibly starting a committee. I think Councilor Sullivan and I are in the are about to, well, not this, for this meeting, but possibly for one of the October meetings, file an order to be sent to ordinance to establish a committee that would be established via ordinance that would look at the Whiting Reservoir. You know, where is it now? Where do we want to see this 10, 15, or 50 years down the road? Its impact to the city could be incredible. Again, not just as an economic development engine, but with a lot of reasonable and sensitive environmental restrictions, Mr. President. I can't, again, thank enough Dave Conti and Mark Nadorf for their help in sort of guiding us through, giving us a lot of the history. I think it's kind of important to point out that the size of our water resources was, I think, really great. There's some really great statistics. Just how small Whiting Reservoir is relative to our Ty Carmody Reservoir, which is an enormous water resource, but compare that to the Quabbin is amazing. So when you look at Ashley Reservoir, when it has 1.5 million gallons, when you look at the Ashley McLean, which has about 500 million gallons, when you look at Ty Carmody, which has 5 billion gallons, and then when you look at the Quabbin as 450 billion gallons of water, I thought those were really interesting statistics, and it kind of puts it into context. I think one of the important things that we're going to have to talk about is the city's relationship with the Department of Environmental Management. There are other conservation related areas, Mr. President, that are in committee right now that environmental management really wants to possibly obtain, and environmental management, I'm sure, would be interested in preserving, to the greatest extent possible, everything in and around Whiting Street Reservoir. The question mark is, what's the benefit? What's the highest and best use to the residents of the city of Holyoke in a tax-strapped city? Could we possibly find a way to use this, Mr. President, as a way to generate tax revenue? And so that's what Mike and I were thinking about when we met earlier this week to discuss the possibility of filing an order relative to a committee. So we felt this was complied with. We wanted to bring this forward. There are so many great ideas that were brought up last Monday night in committee, and with that, I'll turn it over to the maker. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Sullivan, then Councilor Leahy.
Yep, thanks. As usual, Councilor Bartley did a great job of summing up the meeting. The only additional points I'd like to touch on is part of the reason for this is we really don't want to give up this asset, but we're going to spend if we're going to spend $2 million on it, just have it sit there and do nothing. The future, the reason for really doing the work and saving it could be 50 to 100 years down the line when we might actually need this. So it's what do you don't want to give up the right now, so what do you do in the meantime? How can we take advantage of this, and are there other ways to make it revenue producing? And this runs, and what other creative things could we do? We've got the Boys Club and the abandoned ski areas and a butter right next to it. When you talk about recreational activities for the city that could be incorporated there for the citizens, everything from bottling water, not the city doing it, bringing in a franchisee or something and having that accessible to them, zip lining, mountain biking, fishing, picnicking, all kinds of good stuff if we're going to spend some money on it to get some use out of it and possibly some revenue out of it. The one thing I would like to touch on, I'm familiar, I did get the email and I saw the letter regarding the reservoir, and there's one very, very false statement. Everybody should be aware there is, the water at Whiting Street Reservoir is not polluted. It is not hazardous. I'd go up there and drink it right now, right out of the pond, all right? That is completely fictitious. So when you see that, you can completely discard that notion. As Councilor Bartley said, I think we should, we will be under state mandate. The only thing hazardous is the state saying that the dam is on the top hazardous dams in the state. It's on the list of ones that need to be addressed for potential failure. It's not anything that's imminent now, but it's something that has to be addressed, and we are going to have to do something if we want to preserve this for the future.
Councilor Leahy.
I'm going to hold off my comments to item 11M. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this? There's no further discussion. The motion is that the order has been complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Councilor Tallman.
could we take up item, out of suspend the rules and take up agenda item 11L? There's some people in the audience here that possibly could get this talked about. No?
11L, motion is to proceed out of order. Is seconded.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Councilor,
Does 11L have anything to do with 11G?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we
Good,
can go
G.
together, Joe?
I don't have a problem with
It's
that.
your call.
I'm just the second chair that got blindsided here. But could we do both together, Mr. President?
we can, so motion is to take up L and G as a package. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So G is the Committee on Finance was referred in order that the Board of Health Department head and the Animal Control Officer appear before the City Council to discuss both the merits of the Thomas J. O'Connor Animal Control and Adoption Center and alternatives thereto. Advise the Board of Health to provide any report or studies that the city in advance of the subcommittee hearing. Recommend that was complied with. And 11L is that the Committee on Finance was referred that the City Council invite in Pam Peels from the Animal Control in order to discuss the contract, I think it was. So, and that's been complied with. So both are on the table.
Mr. President, I want to make the official recommendation and motion from the Committee on Finance. It is that the both orders were complied with, but we also make a recommendation that the City Council would ask the mayor to reconsider the line item for the Thomas J. O'Connor Animal Control Center, our contributions within the budget. And once these orders have been talked about this evening, that recommendation along with our findings be forwarded to the mayor.
There is,
Second that.
there's notes here, request that mayor, reconsider, I can't even read the second word, with the free cash. And then there's nothing, that's from, that'd be the same. So yeah, it's on your notes, just didn't make it onto the jacket here.
I understand.
Okay.
There's only so much room on the jacket, or it should be on a jacket. There's only so much room on the agenda.
Yeah, so the motion is that it's been complied with a recommendation that the mayor reappropriate the funds from free cash.
Point of
Other
order?
discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Just a point of order?
Okay, Councilor Bartley.
How do you do that? How do you make a recommendation within an order?
It's just a recommendation,
To the
that's
mayor.
all. That's complied with in a recommendation, that's all. It's not ordering them, it's just a request. That's all it is. Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last Wednesday evening, September 12th, the Finance Committee did meet and took up both of these orders at the same time. Present with us for a discussion was Brian Fitzgerald from our Board of Health, along with Eric Velez, who was our Animal Control Officer. With your order and representing Thomas J. O'Connor was Pam Peebles, along with one of the commissioners of the Thomas J. O'Connor Center, and along with one staff member from the center with Pam herself. We allowed and looked forward and had a very lengthy presentation by the entire group that gave us a number of scenarios and a number of statistics to digest. I think the city council doesn't have to be reminded, but on a budgetary move, for no other reason, I believe, we did cut a portion of the city's responsibility to the Thomas J. O'Connor Center itself. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss what the Thomas J. O'Connor Center does, to hear from them and from our Board of Health and from our Animal Control Officer, and to make a determination if the city should be reconsider the budget line item itself. In doing so, we listened to first to Brian Fitzgerald and Pam Peebles, and I believe everybody has on their desk. We asked that not a copy, but a packet be made for everybody. The maroon packet that came from the Thomas J. O'Connor Center itself, and we learned that the center works, and there's no question that Springfield is the lead city, and it is located in the city of Springfield, but it works with Chicopee and Holyoke, and the money that is assessed to each of the communities is done on a per capita basis for Chicopee and Holyoke. We were looking at per capita at 4.35 per resident in within the city of Holyoke, what our responsibility would be. Pam told us that the city of Springfield picks up the balance, which is close to $1.2 million. We discussed about what are the services that T.J. O'Connor gives to each of the communities, and we learned that in 2017. That they have a number of control officers on duty. In 2017, 564 field calls were made to the city of Holyoke. This is available from the hours I believe it starts at 7 a.m. in the morning to 10 p.m. at night. They look in priority for dangerous animals, to stray animals, to dead animals, to what they can do and supplement what our animal control officer does himself. We also learned that the shelter itself, for Holyoke alone, it took in between 390 and 400 animals. These are animals that were stray, some maybe wild, but animals that they took into a shelter, and their process there is always to look for adoption for these animals. In your packet, there is a list, and I will note that we didn't talk in depth about this last Wednesday, but there is a list of about adoptions and returns to owners by city, which I think you'd be surprised to look at the number from Holyoke compared to other communities. There also is a copy of the actual animal calls. A good question was asked, I think it was by Councilor McGee. I apologize if it was someone else it wasn't Councilor McGee. It was asked by one of our members about, I think it was Councilor Sullivan, about the duplicity in this call list. And the calls are done by actual animal. And sometimes it looks like when they respond to something, it's multiple animals at the incident or at what they're responding to, and that's why it looks like it's a duplicate list just for statistics, but it's actually statistically counting the animals that are involved, which becomes the cost of the T.J. O'Connor Center in taking care of any animals that they bring in. We continue to talk with them and ask with them, the impact of what was going on with the city's lack of, we talked to them about the governing of T.J. O'Connor and the members of the commission itself. I'm not sure, someone correct me if I'm wrong, I know at one time Councilor Jordan was our representative, and I'm not sure I don't think we have an elected officials that's representing the city at this time, although they would welcome it. But I believe at the time we have our animal control officer as our voting member with the commission itself. Those votes are important because they do have some say on policy. They do have a say that over what takes place at the animal control at the Thomas J. O'Connor Center itself. TJO has been in service for decades now. I think most of us and most of our constituents are familiar with it and familiar with the service that they provide. I don't think there's a question that it's a needed service. There's always a question of, can it be done more cost efficient? Can it be done in a different way? We've in the past have looked at doing it ourselves as a city for our own needs, and found that not to be cost prohibitive in terms of the not just the startup cost, but of running a center itself. And we have bought into this service for since their beginnings, which I think is going back 25 years. The committee recommends that with what we learned and what we understand about TJO, that we do ask, that we do say the order's been compliant with, but that we also ask the mayor to see if he would, when free cash become available, give us a second chance at the possibility of reappropriating our contribution to the Thomas J. O'Connor Center.
I hope to be much briefer. We had an excellent meeting. The fantastic people from the Thomas J. O'Connor facility came in, and we learned a lot. I was one of the people that cut this from the budget, and the reason being is at the time it wasn't really tangible. It wasn't something that was in front of us. Having the people come in and explain exactly what they're doing is something that we should probably do once a year or so, just because they are doing quite a bit. A lot of the questions I'm getting from my constituents aren't so much about raccoons or skunks. It's now foxes. City of Holyoke seems to have more foxes than other areas. And some of the good things is they're healthy, and they're also, we learned, don't carry rabies as much as other animals. But these are the questions that I get to ask, the professionals. They are doing an excellent job for the City of Holyoke, and I'm certainly going to go along with our committee's recommendation. And it was very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Bartley.
I appreciate that. I happened to go to a Board of Health meeting in, I can't remember, I think it was July or August, and there was a robust discussion at that point. The order talks, we heard about the merits of Thomas J. O'Connor, which, I mean, I'm sure they're numerous. I'm sure the chairman could have gone on and on and on. This order also asked for alternatives. Now, I heard the chair say that the city looked into it at some point, and the city rejected it. Okay, well, when did that happen? Why? Other than, we looked into it, it's expensive. But what alternatives are there? Now, I freely admit that and I've said this before, when I made the motion on budget night, I was as shocked as anybody that it passed. The reason I made the motion is because of complaints from my constituents. You call Thomas O'Connor on weekends, you maybe get an answering machine, maybe get through. So that's a massive deficiency. And you sure as heck don't get a call back. I've done it myself, Mr. President. Left messages, no call back. So I'm glad that they have a lot of nice animals and some lovely people working there. I'm positive of that. But is there anything else? I mean, why does it work in the city of Westfield and it can't work here? Well, because it's very expensive, Counselor. Okay, well, based on what? Well, because it's very expensive. All right. So, I guess I'd be of the, and we also heard, by the way, Mr. President, budget time, that the cost for Thomas O'Connor is going to rise. So I don't know if that was brought up in committee. So it's 180,000, I think it is now. So we cut it in half, and it's going to rise for the next fiscal year. At some point, I'm hopeful that we'll have. I mean, I'm going to vote that this is comply with. I'm not going to vote to, at this point, make a. I'm not going to take a vote on a subcommittee recommendation that we ask the mayor. If there's a separate order to that effect, I'll vote on it, Mr. President. But I'm not going to vote on something that's not before us, whether it's just a recommendation or not. As the chair said, I think that's out of order. That we're now based on something unwritten. That I just think it's out of order. That we're now, we have the order in front of us. The order doesn't say anything about making a recommendation beyond that. If the councilor wants to file a separate order, well, then we can take that up. I think it's completely out of order, Mr. President, and I don't think our rules allow for us to make a recommendation based upon what's written in here. I mean, we can make recommendations on anything if we wanted, anything unwritten. If that's the precedent we're going to set tonight, I don't think we should go down that road. So just in summation, I can't make it any more clear that how much I respect the animal control officer. Our Board of Health is always there when I call them. Every single time I've called the Board of Health, they're right there and they're on it and they're on point. So it's not about that, and it's not about the nice people at the Thomas J. O'Connor Animal Facility. It's not about that. It's about the expense and whether or not there's an alternative. That's all we were trying to find out. We know they're nice people. We get it, and we know they take care of our, I'm a dog owner. I mean, I know we love animals. We get that. It's about the money, Mr. President. That's what we wanted to find out. And if we had a real analysis to say, Bartley, this is, you're way out of whack based upon, here's the data. Well, where is it, Mr. President? I don't see it. Thank you.
On that point, with regards to this, for analysis, they will have to come back to the full council for a request from free cash, or wherever it's going to be, if we don't have free cash, to re-put it into the budget. So at that point in time, we can ask for a full analysis in order to justify putting the money back in or not putting it back in. So if that wasn't answered right now, you still have that opportunity. Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to address the same thing. If this does go, obviously it has to start at room 1, and the mayor would have to send us and then a request, and of course would go to Finance Committee, then the full City Council. But, my 20 years of being here, we've recommended several things to the mayor and other departments. I mean, it's been happening for my 20 years. And I certainly hope the mayor does this again. Thank you.
Councilor President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I personally agree with Councilor Bartley's sentiment, is that it is something to be looked at, and being familiar with the program and working with Thomas J. O'Connor for the years that I was in the health department, never had a problem. It was just a matter of, I remember speaking to the police officer, who was a captain from the Westfield Police Department that actually overtook it. For us to actually look into a program where the city of Holyoke was to be its own animal control facility, we couldn't just dump it on the health department. We couldn't dump it on the animal control officer that works out of the health department. There's got to be a veterinarian on call. We reached out to the doctor that was on East Hampton Road years ago, and we had kicked the idea around maybe taking a section of the geriatric authority over. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's not just a matter of saying, let's take the money away and let's throw it in the health department's bag of tricks. But I agree with you, councilors, that there really has not been a full analysis done as if Westfield can do it and other communities are doing it, what are our options? I could be speaking out of turn, but on top of the fee that we pay annually, there's also a cost for the animal carcasses that we pick up on the streets that are kept in a freezer down at the wastewater treatment plant. If a dog is caught unlicensed on the property and TJO picks it up, where does that money for the ticket go to? So, I mean, I think there's not, besides the $200,000 we might be sending to Thomas J. O'Connor, and again, great facility, great people. It's not, people take, when you ask these type of questions, people take it personally, and they shouldn't. It's about where can we save $300,000 out of the budget when we need $1 million to fix the streetlights? I mean, is it something that we can do in-house? Do we put an animal control facility at Lynch? Do we put it at the geriatric authority? We have more vacant buildings than a lot of communities in our neighborhood. So, I mean, I think that we may want to put a team of people together to have a full-fledged discussion about how can something like this, which would be years away, but how can we can't just say, hey, Fitzy, you're in control of the whole animals within the city of Holyoke. Just not gonna work. Or same thing to Eric as well. Just not, or have the police department do it. I mean, it's got to be, the police has got to be involved. It's got to be so collective. But that discussion, those answers that you're looking for, I've never gotten as well. It's well, why can't you do it? Well, you need a veterinarian. Well, why can't we get a veterinarian? Well, you need this. You need that. So it's just something. It's a good topic. Thomas J. O'Connor's doing a great job, but it is worth talking about. Thank you.
Councilor McGivern, then Councilor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I don't want to echo all the words of Councilor President, but his knowledge in this area, depicts what we heard from our Board of Health Director and a well-respected, our newer animal control officer. It is not a job that they can do alone, and it is not a job that, you can just assume with the shelter itself, the facility itself, I think is what I meant to say, or if I didn't say it correctly, is what is cost prohibitive. Yes, we're buying into a service, but we're also buying into a facility that the service is useless if they don't have some place to bring the animals, if they don't have some place to take care of the animals. So what the idea of Thomas J. O'Connor has been, and I believe continues to be, is that we share those costs with 2 other communities. And by sharing those costs, it helps us to provide the service that we need, which maybe, per animal may sound like it's high. But when you share the cost of the day-to-day operations of a building, a fairly large building, the day-to-day operations of 24 hours care of animals, of medical needs of animals, medical and food needs of, feeding the animals themselves, that's where we're saving some money by sharing with other people. As far as the recommendation, it's not a final vote, and it's just that we felt we got a lot of information that, besides just saying we met with the people as we were asked to, we got the feedback from everybody as we were asked to, and I think the mayor should have at least our findings, or at least be able to share the information we received with the mayor. And that's the only reason for the recommendation. Any appropriation would be subject to a final vote down the road.
Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, I just want to, and obviously I respect the veteran counselors here. They're way more veteran than me, and their institutional knowledge. But when we go through this, I'm going to try to find because I didn't know that this recommendation was going to be before us. Yes, I've filed orders, Mr. President, written orders wherein I've asked this body to recommend to the mayor that the mayor appropriate funds, because the written order is before us. What I'm hearing tonight is there is an unwritten recommendation based upon this order that I think that recommendation is out of order, Mr. President. And I'm going to try to find the rule but I didn't have time to research it because I didn't know it was going to be before us, which is, there's that. But to the main point of what Danny said, I think he really hit the nail on the head. I don't want to burden an overburdened department any more than we already do. As the Board of Health knows, I constantly contact them. I know if I was looking over at Brian, he would say, yes, you do. And because I do. I can't on a weekly basis. There's no doubt about it. But I think what I heard Councilor Brenna say is let's take the long view on this. Let's establish some kind of an ad hoc committee, which I will file that order for the next meeting, for the October meeting, along with the order that Mike and I are going to file relative to the Whiting Reservoir, because it does make sense to at least look at it. I mean, right now we're just getting rhetoric. Well, we can't do it because it costs a lot of money. Well, or we're overburdened. Well, no doubt they're overburdened, and if it wasn't for me, they'd be less burdened. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to take Councilor Bresnahan's advice. I think this is complied with that. I'll end. Thank you.
Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, I'll be brief, and it was very interesting, that meeting the other night, last Wednesday night, and we sat, I think we talked to everybody from the Thomas J. O'Connor and our health department and our animal control. There goes the voice.
Mic's off, Pete.
Okay, got it now. And the animal control officer, and I understand the needs. The packet that Pam gave, it was incredible, the amount of information we got from the Thomas J. O'Connor. And I go along with Councilor Bartley and Councilor Bresson. There's nothing wrong with looking at an analysis in the long run, but the talks about 200,000, it wasn't 200,000. I have my budget book here. It was $175,000 for this, and they cut out 87,000, half of it. I didn't vote for that cut. I feel this is an important need for our community, for the safety of our community. It's something that affects everybody. I don't think people realize that when there is a fire or when there's a problem in a home, that TJ O'Connor comes in and gets those animals, brings them into the shelter there, and notifies the people that they do have them there. In the letter they stated here, I got the packet at home, but the letter stated that anytime they're welcome to have a tour of their facility. And I think that's important, that we actually look at their facility, what they do on a daily basis, the number of people and the number of animals that are there, that coordinate this facility, and the importance of the communities that it serves. The cost is high, yes, and it's based on our population, but I think this is something that should have been fully funded. And as I stated just a few minutes ago, that I think it's important that we do have an analysis and that we look at other cost, maybe measures of having a control officer ourselves. And I think we did bring it up a few years ago, but as Councilor Bartley stated, it was just too expensive, and we don't have no written figures. I feel the cost would really be expensive compared to what we're getting now, but it doesn't hurt to look at that in the long term, that maybe 5 years down the road, we could have a facility here that could last 15, 20, 30 years and save the city some money in the long run. But right now, I believe this is important to have this facility, and the Thomas J. O'Connor is an outstanding facility for the communities that it's used. And I think one thing that wasn't mentioned when one of the commissioners stated that since it's located in Springfield, they pick up the bulk of the budget. Communities of Holyoke and Chicopee pay a portion of the budget, but Springfield really pays a lion's share of the cost of running the facility. So, and the recommendation is just to the mayor, and I understand Councilor Bartley's concern. And if we have to write in something separate, a letter to the mayor or an order, that's fine to fully fund this, but this is an important need of the community that Holyoke serves, and I think it's something that should be fully funded and something that we have to be grateful for that we do have in our community.
Anyone else?
Just point of order. I just think under Rule 22, Mr. President, again, this is like 5 seconds research, where it says, every motion shall be reduced to writing if requested by the President. All orders and resolutions requiring the approval of the mayor shall be presented in writing and signed by the person presenting them. I mean, if we're going to make a recommendation to the mayor, it's got to be in a writing. That is not on this order, Mr. President. So I don't think we can make a recommendation to the mayor, no matter how felt it is. We can all say on the mic, please, mayor, fund it. And I think we're getting it now. But I just don't see it. I don't see that should be part of this motion.
A committee can amend things in committee other than a financial transfer and changing numbers. The committee, in writing, and a full vote of that board, made that recommendation. Once again, we make recommendations all the time. Your point is well taken. It is not in order. Therefore, it is on here. Pursuant to Rule 22, that's how I interpret it. Also, they still have to come back with a financial transfer in order to be voted on to act on everything that you have argued about.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. I just want on the record that I object to the ruling of the chair.
Taken. Anyone else? Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah, well, I guess somebody's got to be the bad guy. I did vote for the budget cut, and I was really impressed by the work that the T.J. O'Connor Center does. They did a great presentation. What's still unfair is the fact that we have probably thousands of residents, taxpayers, homeowners in Holyoke that have no pets at all. And they're carrying the burden, and the animal center does go to great lengths, perform surgeries and put these animals up for adoption, feed them for long periods of time. And this burden is being borne by a lot of people that don't have pets, and it's coming, out of all the taxpayers' budgets. And maybe as we go through this committee, one of the things that ought to be considered is the price that of what it costs for a dog license in Holyoke, what it costs for pets, and that stuff, and who ought to be carrying a better share of that burden.
Anyone else? Counselor Leahy would like to speak. That would be his third time. Pursuant to Rule 20. Your third time, Counselor. Of which, if the counselor wants to speak, would we allow the counselor to
Make a
speak?
motion to allow Counselor Leahy to speak for a
All
third
those in
time.
favor?
Second.
All
Aye.
opposed? Counselor Leahy, third time.
Thank you. Just want to make it clear, Counselor Sullivan said some good things. However, this doesn't have anything to do with personal pets. This is more of raccoons, foxes, and that sort of thing. And the amount of work they do with our fire department as well. When a fire is occurring, they're the first ones that are called to go there and get. And they mention many different type of animals that they pick up, whether it's snakes or my least favorite thing, spiders. And they bring them back until the people can find a new location to house them. But this is something that every citizen in the city of Holyoke, if a rabid raccoon is in your neighborhood, that's concerning everyone. In fact, putting the money back in here is hopefully going to save people's pets because they're not going to get bit and that sort of thing. So this is something that concerns everyone. Thank you.
There's no further discussion on that they've been complied with. That would be G, 11G and L. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Back to, laid on the table, item 1, Committee on Finance was referred an application for taxis, number 65, 9, 27, 29, and 58. Is there any update on the taxis? None, so we'll stay on there. Committee number 2 is Committee on Finance to refer an order that the mayor and others
Make a motion to take number 2 off the table, and also a motion to suspend the rules and go out of order and take up late file A.
Okay, so
Second.
motion to suspend the rules, take up 2 and late file A as a package. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? If it's a late file, motion would be to suspend the rules and act on the late file.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? So 2 that was laid on the table is that the Committee on Finance was referred in order that the mayor or others knowledgeable please provide detailed explanation of how the city employee paid for IT services prior to the close of fiscal year 2018. Recommend that it was adopted. Then we received a communication today from Rory Casey. Dear Councilor Bartley, the communications response to your recent adopting order requesting information about the city employee using their personal credit card to pay past due invoices. On June 20th, the city website hoyoke.org went down. Eileen Pooler, the city website manager, started to investigate the cause of the outage. She discovered that it was due to non-payment. This was a result of there being no money in the IT budget line. Understanding that the website is the official posting method for all public meetings under the open meeting law, and that there was a city council meeting that night, Eileen used her personal credit card to bring the site back online. She was subsequently reimbursed. Her conversation with the billing rep from the hosting company is attached. Do we have an attachment? I have no attachment. I do not have the attachment. We're looking for it now. The solicitor's office contacted the Attorney General's office to notify them of the outage, but since the site was down for less than 6 hours, the public meeting went on as scheduled. Please let me know if you have any additional concerns. Rory Casey. And there is no attachment.
Right.
So, Counselor
I just want to make a motion to comply with.
Okay, so,
Second.
Just like a discussion.
so 2 and A that they are complied with. It was seconded under discussion, Counselor Bartley. You have anything?
Under discussion, if I
Okay,
may.
under
And
discussion.
I'm sure all councilors are paying attention on their phones right now, and I would appreciate that, just common courtesy for 2 seconds. First, I want to acknowledge the chairman of the finance really for taking this up and for allowing us to table this at the last meeting. I really appreciate Joe's patience in doing this. So I want to personally extend my thanks to the chairman for doing that. I also want to thank the administrative assistant for at least providing some documentation. It wasn't done, he did promise me he would come to the last meeting, but at least it came, though it was a late file. I mean, it came in today, so I sent it to the clerk, and the clerk is a late file, because it just came today. So that's why it came as a late file. But I just think it is vitally important, though we don't have all the documentation, that it's now on the record, it's now on the record that the IT department ran out of money, that an employee of the city of Holyoke, in order to buttress a city budget, took her own personal credit card and paid for a city expense. We now have that all on the record. I just think Mr. President, it's vital that all counselors hear that. I wish we had more information. I wish we had an explanation of why the IT department ran out of money, Mr. President. It's not clear to me, I mean, how a city department, because they pay the same fee month after, I mean, was the server fee increased? What was the rationale? We don't have that before us. And that was a touch beyond the scope of but those are follow-up questions when it comes to budget time, when it comes to taking other votes, Mr. President, i.e. the vote we have tonight coming up relative to taking money out of stabilization fund for capital expenditures. It's just how the government is budgeted, Mr. President. And if I may, just put into context why we took that vote last June. It wasn't to be mean to the city department. I know councilors say, well, I wouldn't cut a city budget because you know, I don't want to, it wasn't to be mean to this department. This is not being mean to department head. The city's broke, Mr. President. That's why I took the vote I took last June. That's why I'm bringing this up right now. And now we have the most clear-cut example we've ever seen that an employee is using her personal credit card, Mr. President, to pay for a city expense. In the history of Holyoke, has this happened? I mean, I know teachers, teachers do it all the time, right? So there's an example. Teachers take money out of their own pockets to constantly buttress a school department budget. But for the city government, has any employee ever written a check? I mean, a personal check to cover the costs of the budget? In this case, it happened. A personal credit card was used. I just think that all counselors, again, I'm not being mean to anybody. It's not about personalities. It's just about the money, Mr. President. It's about the lack of focus dealing with the budget, which should be the primary concern of the executive, is the budget, Mr. President. It doesn't seem to be the case, but at least we now have it for us. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, just very quickly, I was on my phone looking at my email that I received. I don't have a copy of this letter, so I was looking, I believe we got emailed it today, and so I'm in the process of trying to find this letter. I appreciate you reading it. Do we have a copy of this letter?
I have a copy right here of the letter. That refers to an attachment that is not here, so that's all I can tell you as to what I have.
Yeah, so does this require a vote or whatnot?
It was an order that we get an update as to what happened. That's the communication that came with it. From committee after taking it up, what's laid on the table is that recommend that it be adopted, or in essence, really, it's complied with.
Thank you.
Council President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple thoughts is that it's just disappointing that the letter dated from the executive office is dated today's date. It's a late file order. We got it at 2:16, the day of the meeting. You know, not an emergency, but we're talking about it, which is just mind blowing. But you know, the attachment that ironically enough is missing. This is no reflection upon the president, but the attachment that's missing is the correspondence between. I won't mention her name. Our website person from working for the city of Holyoke, emailing back and forth about the transaction. My credit card, here's my number, give me a call, I'll make the payment type of stuff. Nothing super private, but it's just like, and that transaction took place on June 20th of 2018, so 3 months, and we get a late file order the day of the meeting, and we're still, so like, we'll say it's complied, we'll forget about it, but to Councilor Bartley's point, it's really, where's the money? I mean, why is this department being funded? Why is someone using their own personal credit card? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's not a ton of dough either. It's like $83 or something. But I just think it's the point. It's like, it's a late file order, which again isn't an emergency. I mean, there needs to be a firewall for late filed orders. And me and Joe, we've had conversations day after day about going back and forth and then and slapping each other on the back afterwards. But this is in the same vein. And why are we taking up what this is a late filed order? This is not an emergency. This could have gone on the agenda. So now the public knows and the public saw a copy of the fact that the IT person paid a bill. Because right now they don't, because it's not on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor McGee, and then Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor President, I wasn't going to say a word because the last time I said a word at the last meeting, I was not very coherent, and I apologize for yelling back and forth with you. Mr. President, I think Councilor Bartley, for bringing up this, some people think it's a small issue, but it's not a small issue. And I appreciate his point as from a budget point of view. I want to take it one step further. And the one step further I want to point out is Eileen Pooler is not the department head of IT. And technically, IT in the budget doesn't show a department head because IT services is paid for by the gas and electric, as contracted by the city, and I believe two people who work on, I don't know if it's 37 and a half hours a week or full-time or part-time on-site here in City Hall. The question I raise is this also sends up a yellow flag as who's monitoring this budget? Who was watching the monthly expenses? Who was watching how much is left in that account? If you read the attachment is an email that Eileen made with the service provider. The person's name on the other end is Joe, is not me. And it's clear that Eileen was frustrated with the communication, because it's verbatim, with the person on the other end. How could you shut down a city website because $83 wasn't in the account to be taken out on a monthly basis? Somebody wasn't watching the hens. And I'm not going to point fingers or blame someone, but a budget, and I agree with one of the things Councilor Bartley said is, the watching of the budget is fundamental on a monthly basis. It's a 12-month budget. At the beginning of the year, you should have enough money in the budget to finish the year. If you don't, you address it with the department head, with the mayor, or if the mayor's office is responsible for it, they address it themselves. But someone should have been watching besides Eileen.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. And I agree with all the comments made regarding monitoring the budget, which is critical given the conditions in general of the city. But there were bigger ramifications with this as well. If this particular employee had not paid that bill, we would have been thrown out of compliance with the open meeting law. It would have disrupted the city council meeting because it would have been offline for an extended period of time. And the only reason it didn't become a bigger legal issue was because the window was 6 hours rather than whatever number of hours it would have been. So it would have been a huge disruption to the process and for the public that we're here to serve as well. So, it's a big deal on a number of levels, and we just need more accountability in our city. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, item 2 in late file A, whereas a package that they are complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Public comment. There is no one signed up for public comment. Communications, item 3 is from Bellamy Schmidt, the city auditor, for the sewer fund as of July 31st, 2018.
Receive it for a copy to Committee on Finance, please.
Motion is received
Second.
referred to finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item 4 is from the city clerk, minutes of September 5th, 2018. Is there a motion to receive these, or?
Motion to receive.
Second.
Motion is to receive. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 5 is from the Fire Commission for August 15th, 2018.
Even accept?
Motion is
Second.
to receive and accept. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Petitions, 6. Petition from RISE Holdings, a special permit for 130 Race Street. Motion is to send to ordinance.
Ordinance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can we just take 7 and 8 as a package and send them to ordinance, please?
7 and 8, was that?
7 and 8, yeah, it looks like.
7 and 8 as a package. All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? 7 is a petition for a special permit for 650 Beaulieu Street, and 8 is for 73 Sargent Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's an ordinance, right? So
Ordinance, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
9 is too, isn't it? Is that you?
Number 9 is a petition for a special
DGR, please.
permit for
Second.
a driveway, so that's to DGNR. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Question?
Yep.
I can ask you later. I just never heard of this special permit.
Driveway construction,
In the front yard. That's
probably in the
issue.
front yard, yeah.
I tried to get that.
Paving's not allowed in the front yard.
No, I know that, but I never heard of a special permit to, it should be a variance.
It should be a Board of Appeals type of thing.
Since committee has to go to variance.
If we can just get, if we can refer a copy to law department, just get a ruling on
Number
that.
9, refer a copy to the law department to make sure whether or not it needs a variance or has to get a special permit. So it's to DGNR, you said, Counselor, and then to copy to law, correct? You have a question on it, Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure the law department sends a communication to DGR
Make sure.
to make sure. So if, Ryan could, our administrative assistant, I'm sorry, could monitor that, please, and then once we receive the communication, we'll take it up at committee. Just as a point, I have conferred with constituent, and the constituent was advised to go the special permit route by the clerk's office. So that's where it lies.
All right. So, Counselor President?
I just had to take an order out of motion.
All right, so for this, it's a sending to DGNR, copy to legal, to have them follow up to make sure it's the right process. If not, we'll fix it.
Figure it out.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Council President, you had a question.
I would recommend to the chair of finance, I believe, if we have Captain Moriarty here, if we're ready to make a move, maybe we could
We're ready.
help him go home and see his family.
We're ready.
11A,
I believe there's 2, but we have to do them separate. We do 11A first.
what's the other one? A and
Be
then-
right after it, 11B.
Okay, so first one is 11A. Let's suspend rules, proceed out of order, take up 11A. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This is, the Committee on Finance has referred in order that the committee transfer $275,874 from stabilization to motor vehicles. Motion is.
Motion to
that it be
pass the
approved.
pass the first reading.
Motion is
Second.
received, passed first reading, seconded, under discussion, Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did take this up last Wednesday at the Finance Committee meeting. Our new chief, Manny Feeble, was here, Captain Moriarty, Sergeant Hart, and Captain Pratt were present. The discussion centers around an order that was tabled back in June. It's an order that came from the mayor near the end of the fiscal year, and the request was to buy new cruisers, which I think I'll briefly make that argument as to why we should buy so many new cruisers every year. And the request is to use the amount needed from stabilization. The amount needed for what we're looking at in the proposal is $275,874. The chief, with the help of the captains and sergeants, gave us a presentation. We many years ago learned if you go 1 or 2 years without buying any cruisers, you can quickly find yourself in a black hole where you have to replace the entire fleet. Our cruisers run 24/7. They're not assigned to an officer. They're assigned to a shift, whoever is on a given route, on a given beat. In our cruisers, currently, there are 6 line cars that are running, they're 2,000, 2 of them are 2015 cars, 4 of them are 2017. The 2015 have averaging a little under 100,000 miles. The 2017 cars are right about at the 40 and 50,000 mile marker. They're looking to replace these. They tell us that this vehicle that we went to, that there is the new model coming out that's being used pretty much across the board is a new model. It's a hybrid. It is something that we could, if we do it if we get the order in by September 21st, we would make a difference of up to $5,000 per vehicle. Vehicles, once we buy them, do have to be outfitted. It's not just a question of buying them and getting them in. It's a question of being able to get them and to get them ready for police use. The committee talked and asked a number of questions, and I think the issue isn't the purchasing of police vehicles, and I apologize, I'm not sure if I told you the amount that number of vehicles in this order would be for 6. The issue is always the issue is funding, and the source of funding could be more of a discussion than the actual purchasing of the vehicles or the need to purchase them. We talked for very briefly that this is not something that you want to look into bonding, because unlike a fire apparatus, which has a life expectancy of 15+ years, a police car vehicle probably has a life expectancy of less than 5 years. But the Finance Committee did got all the information for the full City Council, and recommend that the appropriation by transfer be adopted.
Anyone else? Councilor Bacon.
I was just wondering if we know an expected date for the certification of the free cash.
The last our acting auditor has said to me is it's with the state. He believes, when he said it, he believed it was going to be sometime in early September. To my knowledge, it hasn't been certified. There is the outside audit, which I think is about to be finalized. That outside audit would not be for, I believe it's at least a year behind, if I remember correctly. But it is part of the process that audit be kept up to date. So I'm expecting it anytime soon, but to this date, it's not been certified.
Thank you. So I'll just say for the record that while I am definitely in favor of getting vehicles for the police department, I want to see what we have for cash to spend on that before we take money out of the stabilization fund. Thank you.
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, I would just say that, again, the chairman's always on point, and he's right on. He anticipated this comment. It's the source of the funds. I'm pretty confident we're going to have other issues, whether it's the school department, whether it's the waterworks. We heard about that, and we know winter's coming, where there's really a potential to dip in, and a need to dip into stabilization. I think this is a capital outlay in the largest city budget, exclusive of the school department, of course. We're just talking about the city side, not the school department side. The largest budget by far of any city department. They know they need cruisers. And here we are, and I appreciate the chairman's argument, but that was the same argument we got for, it's going to be, say, $5,000 a car, and it makes sense. If we had, Mr. President, a promise we could rely on from the executive that if we use stabilization now, I would do it in a heartbeat if we were advised that free cash upon certification will go right back to supplement the stabilization that's used now. I would do it in a heartbeat. Because like the chairman mentioned, yeah, you could get a savings if you do it now. You could use more fuel-efficient vehicles. Maybe someday we'll have a police chief that may actually want to look into motorcycles, as other departments. That Chicopee has it now, and Springfield has it. Maybe, they're half the cost, a third of a cost, and fuel efficient. And they can go all sorts of places that cruisers can't go. And they could supplement a force. And we had a prior chief, he just flat out said no. That's his right. He's 30 years on the job and fine. But maybe there's other chiefs that think differently. But Mr. President, right now, stabilization, financially speaking, it's the one thing the city of Holyoke can hang its hat on. We know it keeps going up every year by the miracle of a stock market, which I'm the last person that ever, I don't understand any of it, but the stock market is doing very well. The stabilization account is doing well, not because we've added principal, but because the interest keeps accruing and accruing and accruing. So we've got some very great advisors that are helping us grow that account, and it's wonderful. I didn't hear anything from the chair whether or not we had an opinion from Cinder, from Bond Counsel, relative to whether using capital expenses for cruisers is something that Bond Counsel would want. I'm going to suggest probably not. So again, it's not about the department, Mr. President. It's just about the money. The stabilization is something that councilors well before my time should be very proud of. Mayors well before the current mayor should be very proud of, because they started it, they established it, and they've kept it growing. I mean, I'm just here enjoying the largesse of it, but as I said before, we are stewards of the city government. When we start to dip into it, oh, just this time, Counselor, it won't be just this time. And this is a capital budget, Mr. President. How many times has the finance chair, and he said on the microphone many times, what have you got for a capital budget? Well, we don't have one. The finance chair himself has brought up time and time again in this body. We don't have a capital budget, Mr. President. And now, in lieu of a capital budget, in lieu of the biggest department budget out of all departments, we have to go to stabilization. Why? Because that's where the money is. If they could go into block grant funds, they'd do it. If they could go into CPA funds, they would do it. But those are restricted. But that one they can ask for. The only other thing they could possibly ask for is an override, and maybe that's going to come one of these days, Mr. President, followed shortly by a receiver. I mean, it's just one of those things. I hope that we can. And again, if we have the precedent, Mr. Chairman, of refunding stabilization, yes, I would do it right. I'd vote for it right, and I'd make the motion. But we don't have that precedent because it just hasn't happened. And any promise coming to that effect would be nothing but an empty promise. There's nothing to prove that that's ever happened. Oh, yes, it's gone up by $500,000. Yes, thank God it's gone up by $500,000. That's why we're able to bond all these things we've been bonding, and we have future bonding, whether it's the waterworks. You just heard it in the minutes, $11.9 million absolutely coming from the waterworks. High priority, and that's half of what they need. How do you think we're going to get that? We're going to have to bond for it. How do you think we're going to bond for it? Because we have stabilization. To take it out now, no matter how warranted, I think it's imprudent. I think it's a bad fiscal move, Mr. President. Therefore, I will vote no.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yes, and again, I might need Councilor McGivern's help on this because he's younger and I'm older and I can't remember as much anymore as he can. One of the things that was presented was if we don't get these vehicles now, it wasn't just the savings of the $5,000, also that the new models were a different model. This was the last chance to get the old models, which are complementary to our current fleet. Is there something, Joe, in the notes there that you could refer?
If I could, Mr. Chair, just respond to the question. I didn't bring that up because I understand it, but I just what we were told was that with this going to, that's why I brought up we're going to a hybrid, but what we were told that if we're going to, like the newer models, the interchanging of parts is what happens typically in any of our fleets, but especially in the police department. In the newer models, when we go to them, are not going to be interchangeable with 2017, 18, and 19.
So if we buy,
I'm just, it doesn't read right, is why I apologize, because
So
it
they
was
say-
said at the meeting, I believe is what Mike is referring to. Oh, I apologize. What we're looking to do is to get the 2019 Explorer that would be interchangeable. If we don't do that soon, we're going to be going into 2020, which will not be interchangeable. Thanks.
That pretty much, for me, I was right on the, it really bothers me about taking out of that stabilization, but this is something that's changed in the automotive industry, something that's tough for any department, I think, to budget for in advance is having your entire fleet become obsolete. You're crossing a line here right now between the when you can order these, And as I understand it, all these vehicles are uniform throughout all the cities and towns in the Commonwealth. So it's our last chance to get an order in for this type that complements the fleet we have.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you. I too do not like using the money out of the stabilization fund. I've been on this council for a long time, and I don't think I voted. I can't remember the last time I voted to take any money out of the stabilization fund. But talking to the police officers over the years, many years ago, I remember a young officer telling me, God forbid something happened to me, it'd be one of two things. One, it would be because of our radios didn't work, or two is because of one of the vehicles crapping the bed. We took care of the radio issue. Now I think it's time for us to take care of the cars, the fleet of cars that run 24/7. So I'm going to vote for this tonight. I think it's absolutely imperative that we keep, whether it's the firefighters or the police officers' vehicles maintaining, but taking the money out of this account is not something I like doing. Thank you.
I have a question. Was there any discussion about using any money in the budget to shift it over to help offset this cost? From the police
Within
department?
the current budget?
Yeah.
No, there was no discussion about that.
Because I brought up the issue at the last finance meeting. We accepted the 911 grant, which what we were told is the E911 grant, in essence, will backfill the salaries for E911 dispatchers, which there are 12, and then there are 4 part-time. And then the excess can be used for overtime, equipment, of which we're told at the meeting they're buying no equipment. They're going to use it all for overtime. So if we're taking $175,000, which is what the E911 grant was, and we're putting it to overtime, then why don't we take from the overtime account $100,000, $75,000, whatever the number we want to come up with, to then offset this number? That would be my argument. In essence, it's time to get a little creative with our budget in order to accommodate for our expenses.
Right.
In essence, we are relatively early in the fiscal year that we approved, so therefore we haven't used up these line items in order to pay for those expenses. As I said in that meeting, and I did talk with the officers afterwards, saying that I'm not trying to fight with you, but overtime or cars? What are we looking for here? We need cars for safety or overtime. Therefore, for me, I'd like to see some creativeness here to try and use up. I'm not saying you can use the 911 grant. They're going to come back and fire that at me. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're moving the money from the 911 grant into dispatch. The dispatch money is then being moved to overtime. We know how that trick works. Now you can take money from overtime to apply it over towards paying for cars to then offset this. And Councilor Bartley has hit it right on the head. Cinder has said time and time again, if you take from stabilization, it's got to be for some type of plan or some type of emergency. We all know snow removal was one of those emergencies. This could be viewed as an emergency. However, they did say when touching the interest on the account, she stood right there at that door, you should have a plan in place. By allowing a plan in place, it allows her to make an argument for bond counsel to say that they're following a plan to use interest in order to cover expenses, and therefore that's a qualified expense that does not impact the bond rating. We do not have a plan. We do not have anything. So I say, I understand the fleet's getting old. It's not that old. It's only a couple of years. I understand the argument. It's $5,000 here. I also understand that if we shift over to the next year of cars, parts aren't interchangeable, we just hired a mechanic in order to maintain the fleet, another expense. Time to get a little creative with our expenses. Dipping into stabilization of this nature, I'm against. Anyone else?
Motion.
All right, motion is to pass the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
No.
Motion to pass the second reading.
Motion is passed the second reading. The clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for taking from stabilization. If you vote no, you're voting against it.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
No.
Bresnahan,
No.
Leahy,
Yes.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
McGee,
No.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
No.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
No.
6 yeas.
With your vote, you have not approved the transfer. 11B, the Committee on Finance to refer an order, Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, that the City Council hereby accept the provisions of the 2017 Brine Justice Assistant Grant. Recommended that it be adopted.
Make a motion to receive and adopt the acceptance.
Motion is received.
Second.
Pass the first reading for the grant appropriation. Thank you, Mr. President. We did meet last Wednesday. We did take a 4-0 vote on recommending that we accept this grant. I think some people are familiar with the Burns Justice Assistance Grant. There are no matching funds. This go-around is for $34,318. Some of the items that have been earmarked that this grant will be used as part of this grant are items that are needed within the police department itself. New computers, paper shredder, a smart TV for the, not to watch the ball games, but a smart TV for the situation room, and, Matt, I forget, 15...
Cruisers.
I wish. But we did have a discussion about this. Grants are a wonderful part of many of our departments, and we have some wonderful, good grant writers within the police department over the years. And I know there's a number of people that work very hard on these, including Sergeant Hart and Captain Deputy Chief Moriarty over here. But we do recommend that we accept the grant and set up the fund and necessary procedures for the administration of said grant.
Second.
Counselor Bartley?
What's the match, Joe?
There is no match.
What's the amount of the grant, Joe?
$32,318.
How much was it, Joe?
I just read it this evening because I didn't have it in my notes.
Oh, sorry, it's $34,318.
Correct.
Don't shortchange us, Joe. No, I'm sorry.
What did I say?
32.
We need that extra two.
Close
Well,
enough.
the other two we're going to funnel over to a cruiser.
Anyone else? Motion is passed the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Motion to pass the second reading?
Motion is passed the second reading. Clerk call roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the grant.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos.
Yes.
Bartley.
Yes.
Bresnahan,
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Unanimous.
With your vote, you approve the grant. We'd go back, if there's no others to go out of order. We're back to the President's report. We do have a list of things. First off, I would like to ask for a moment of silence for Sandy Smith's husband, who did pass away. I know through the Flower Fund, Joe McGivern, or Counselor McGivern, sorry, Joe, stepped up and actually ordered and had flowers delivered. They're absolutely beautiful to Sandy and her family. So I'd like to ask for a moment of silence with regards to that. Thank you. Counselor Roman said he couldn't make it tonight. He was under the weather. However, he wanted to extend out an invitation to everyone here and a reminder to everyone at home that September 22nd at 12 o'clock we'll start the Taste of South Holyoke. He invites all of us down there for 12 o'clock to have everything start up, and he likes us being down there to have us go around and enjoy. I did receive a communication from Terry Shepard. I know it was in an email form. She was trying to get on the agenda, but she thought by doing the email was sufficient, so she tried to cover everything. Medal of Honor dedication, October 3rd at 3:30 at Veterans Park. Counselor Bartley did point out to me, October 2nd, he will have the Blue Sox in for the proclamation. October 16th, he'll have Ed Case in for a proclamation. Tomorrow, starting at 5 or 5:30, Councilor Leahy, is the interviews for auditors Tomorrow's the 23rd.
5:30.
5:30 tomorrow here for the auditors. I did receive an email while I got here of all the people that we requested and reviewed. There's still 6 or 7 left that are
There's 7 of
interested.
them.
7. So if you have either received the job or are no longer interested, there's 7 left on the list. They'll start interviews tomorrow at 5:30. That's all I have, unless I can remember something. Councilor Valentin?
Thank you. Just a reminder, as I had mentioned at a meeting before, I think I mentioned it almost a month ago, so just a reminder. Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Maria, and we will be doing a number of events here in Holyoke. So just as a reminder for those of us who are here and those who are watching from home, we're going to start at 4 o'clock with a march from across Morgan School, which is where it's a former site of a building that had burnt down a while back, and we're going to be recreating a march that had left from that area to City Hall regarding the deaths that had come as a result of fires in the city, and replicating it with the intent of the deaths regarding Hurricane Maria. So it's something that came up as an idea from folks in the community. So that's going to start our events tomorrow. So that's at 4, leaving from Morgan School. Then from 5 to 7, we'll be here at Veterans Park. And there's a number of events happening at that moment where we've set it up as stations. So there'll be an open mic station for folks to share their thoughts or poems or writings on what September 20th means for them. There'll be a station for folks to make their own vejigante mask, which is something that's a big part of the Puerto Rican culture. There'll be a station where we will be screening a short film called Promesa, which is regarding the fiscal crisis in Puerto Rico. And this was, the hurricane way before Maria. And this is a film actually from someone who's local, who's a Hampshire College grad. And we'll also have a station for, it's going to be called a remembrance clothesline, where people can leave notes on a clothesline regarding their thoughts on September 20th and what they would like to share with other folks in the community. And I think I'm forgetting something. There'll also be a station with Domino's Table, which is a big part of our culture as well. So that's just a sample of some of the things we'll have. That's 5 to 7 at Veterans Park. And then at 7:30, there's actually going to be a great event at the Warehouse. It's going to be a fundraiser. It's a comedy night where 2 of the 3 comics are coming from New York City, and all proceeds are going to 3 organizations in in Puerto Rico that are helping with the rebuilding of homes, specifically rebuilding of homes. So if you have any questions about any of this, let me know. These are all on Facebook page events, and they are all obviously open to the public. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, first of all, just kind of piggyback what my colleague said. Tomorrow I'll be saying a special prayer when I go to the church in regards to the 3,000 lives that were lost in Puerto Rico. Very tragic. The second thing is I just want to wish all my friends who are celebrating Yom Kippur tonight a happy celebration. I also want to acknowledge we have Irma with us. It's always fun to see Irma sitting in front of us. So welcome, Irma. As Councilor McGee had said, we do have the interviews for the auditors tonight. Tomorrow night, rather, at 5:30. So if you could come down, or if you can watch it on TV, or the people at home, I think it'd be a great thing to watch. And also, I want to acknowledge Ryan's hard work with Hector setting all this up. There's a lot of moving targets, a lot of moving bases. So I just want to thank Ryan for his due diligence on that. And Monday, we also have another public service meeting coming up as well, because we have a lot of other positions to fill. So we have a big plate in front of us. So thank you very much.
Anyone else? Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, just briefly, I just wanted to mention a follow-up that Olivia Mazel sent us about the Medal of Honor dedication. There'll actually be, the guest speaker is Adjutant General Gary Keefe from the Massachusetts National Guard, who was one of my former commanders over at Barnes, and some of the descendants from other recipients of the Medal of Honor will be in attendance there. And also, tomorrow is the 2nd anniversary of the Veterans Lunch at St. Paul's, and actually in Ward 4 on Appleton Street, that many people, I think some of you saw the the article in about it with Gina Nelson that's been running that for 2 years. And if anybody can make that event tomorrow, it's from 12 to 1:30 at St. Paul's Church on Appleton Street.
Counselor Bartley.
Yeah, I'll be there. I hopefully we can have a moment of silence for what happened in Puerto Rico last year, Hurricane Maria, on the anniversary tomorrow. I just want to quickly acknowledge the reason we're meeting on Wednesdays because we had Holyoke Day for the 7th time yesterday at the Big E. It was a tremendous success. We had bands, we had dancers, we had cheerleaders, we had sports teams, we had, sadly, politicians, and but it was again, Holyoke was represented so well, blew away Rhode Island again, and because we're combined with Rhode Island. I want to thank again the Eastern States for once again inviting the city to participate. The weather turned out to be tremendous. It was a sketchy day to begin with, turned out to be a beautiful sunny day, great day for a march. All the counselors and all the participants, they know who they are, and I really thank them for coming. Again, it was just a wonderful day for the city of Holyoke, and something of which we should be very proud.
All right, with that, we will move on to reports of committees. Ordinance Committee, 10A. Committee on Ordinance was referred a special permit application for 5 Appleton Street. Recommend that the permit be approved with the following conditions: that the owner of the building always pay commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local law. That the business retain a minimum of 30% of Holyoke residents for non-security jobs. 3, that hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or retired members of another police department that now live in the city of Holyoke. That there be no marijuana consumption to be allowed on site. That there be no deliveries or retail or medical marijuana room, looks like room without the O, to site the individual home, residents, or people. That the hours of operation be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday.
Mr. President, and I would add an amendment
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were Mike. I'm sorry, Linda.
to that, that there should be in item 7 that was voted out of committee, that the water service recommendations made per letter dated July 17th of 2018. There were 5 items cited in the letter that the applicant stipulated to, and those also became part of the conditions. The letter's in the jacket.
Yep, so
behind
I have it right here.
I'll second that.
Item 7 would be Holyoke Waterworks 1 through 5 on letter of July 17, 2018. And it is attached here. Recommendation water system improvements for 5 Appleton Street. And that's the 7th condition.
Yes. So the motion for this special permit is to approve the special permit
Motion is to
as
approve
with the conditions noted.
special permit, okay. Wait, is this also one that we just got a communication about? that
I
we
don't know,
talked about?
I've not received any communication relative to this.
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to amend that and to refer it back to ordinance committee.
Motion is to refer it back to ordinance. That's seconded. There was a communication that we did receive just before coming in. It is a late file.
So I'll make a motion to take up late file, what's the letter, Ryan? Late file B.
Motion is take up late file B to
Second.
suspend the rules to take it up as it pertains to 10A. All those in favor? All those
And motion to
opposed?
take, we taking, suspend and take final action on this, Mr.?
I think it would have to go back to committee. That's the
Okay,
recommendation.
then we have to make that motion.
Would you like me to read the letter? Would you like to all refer to ordinance?
I would like,
President, if I could ask a
Counselor
point of
McGee.
information, we're being asked to refer something back to ordinance. I don't know why.
I can read the communication, Councilor McGivern. I know it's kind of vague. While walking in, I had a voicemail received from a department head And then an email came in, and the clerk handed us a late file as of 4:29 today. And since it was suspended, I will read it. Regarding special permit application for 5 Appleton Street, dear City Council members, this letter is an important update related to the application for the special permit for Holyoke Garden. The Holyoke Fire Department, Holyoke Police Department, Board of Health, and the Building Department have received many complaints related to 903 Dwight Street owner David Caputo, Holyoke Gardens. These departments have followed up on complaints and have now expressed deep concern over this project that have very recently developed. The following is a summary of the findings. As of early as July, complaints about the owner renting rooms on this property and growing over 100 plants were made to various departments, Police Department, Fire Department, Board of Health, and the Building Department tried to conduct inspections of the house but were denied entry. On September 10th, Board of Health, Holyoke Police Department, Building Department, Holyoke Fire Department were allowed a partial entry and conducted an inspection of 903 Dwight Street. Upon inspection, it was found that the single-family home was being used as a boarding house by definition, and the house had an extensive modifications to conduct and commercial grow operation. There was an inspection on the 11th and 12th in which an extensive work on the property had found over 75 plants removed from the property by the Holyoke Police Department. This information was not readily available to share with the Ordinance Committee given the timing. Attached, you will find the reports and relative documents. I have not personally inspected the property, but I volunteered on behalf of other departments to compile and share with the council members. It is my suggestion to send this back to Ordinance Committee to discuss this matter. If you have any further questions, feel free to call or email. Sincerely, Damon Cody, Building Commissioner.
Mr. President.
Councilor Bacon.
I have a question on a point of order relative to this, because we just had an ordinance committee meeting on September 11th. It appears from that letter, which you did show me on your phone in minute type during our executive session, that they were aware of issues that they are now citing well before September 11th. We've had 1, 2, or 3 sessions in ordinance relative to this special permit. The hearing is closed. And so my question on a point of order is this information that appears to have nothing to do with the special permit, from a legal point of view, able to be taken in at this point with the public hearing closed? So I would request that this letter be referred to legal, so that legal can weigh in on it before we do anything with it in ordinance committee.
What? That is fine. I'm just letting you know a communication came in, and it was as I was walking in the building.
Well, right, but I mean, it's not a legal thing. It's not a communication from the police department. It's speaking to all the other departments, but no one from the departments that are being spoken for has sent us any communication during an entire public hearing process. That's my concern here.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Counselor. If you would like to suspend the rules to allow the legal department to.
No, I would not. I
Okay.
would like to refer that to legal, and I would like to have a written legal response on the matter.
Okay, so your motion is to take late file B and refer it to legal with a response back to ordinance or the full council meeting?
I would like the response to come to ordinance as soon as possible so that we could properly include it on the agenda if the motion to send it back to committee is what prevails.
All right, so the first motion would be to send it to committee, but then you're now asking for a motion for B separately to be referred to the legal department with a response back to ordinance as soon as possible.
Prior to taking it up. I want to make sure we're on proper legal footing.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
It is seconded. All those in favor, once again, to take late file B, refer it to legal with a response back to ordinance as soon as possible. Counselor Bresnahan.
Just, I mean, I would prefer a day as soon as possible. Means a lot of things to a lot of people. I would say 10 days, a week. I mean,
Prior to September 25th.
as long as there's some sort of,
September?
25th, that's next week. Tuesday.
Well,
Tuesday,
it's
yeah.
not rocket science.
A lot of lawyers in that office.
Tuesday, by Tuesday.
So I just would prefer having a deadline date.
No, I take your
So,
point. I
Councilor
amend my
President-
motion to prior to September 25th.
All right, so motion is to send late file B to legal with response back to ordinance by September 25th. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
A point of information on that?
Councilor McGee?
Sure, a question, I guess, information. Being that these are new permits, is there, once the public hearing closed, is there a timetable when the city council has to act on it?
I believe there
Yes.
is.
And do we know what that timetable is?
You can spend the, Councilor Bacon, you have that?
Hang on, I have an email that speaks to that,
You know how to work that thing?
sort of.
Should we just suspend the rules and have the law department come to the microphone?
She may be able to just tell us.
She's got the
Hang
email.
on.
Give her 1 second.
Mr. President, just under.
Councilor Bartley had a
Okay.
discussion. Oh, wait,
just a-
Councilor Bacon?
Okay, so it's 90 days after the close of the public hearing that a special permit granting authority must make their final decision.
All right, so we have time.
We have plenty of
I mean,
time.
Plenty of time. We have a meeting on October 2nd. So Councilor Bartley.
Mr. President, I don't know what the rules are, whatever the rules, I just need a point of order on this. I signed that jacket, but unbeknownst to me, this is before us. So I'd like to have my signature removed from that jacket. Can I do that?
Well,
Sure.
as we learned, you can always remove it, but as we always learned is, you can sign a jacket or not sign it. It doesn't mean you're in favor or against the order, it's just to bring it out for discussion from committee. Here, it's already out in discussion, then now the order or the motion is to send it back to committee for further discussion. So you could remove your name, or it's just going back to committee anyways, if voted by the board. Does that answer your question?
It does, so
It's one, I guess it's one and the same. If it's going back to committee, it's whether you take your name off it or not.
well,
Or if you do take it off, Counselor, then they only have 2 signatures, it would automatically not be able to take it up, but we've already taken it up.
Talking up, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's too late. We're already in the
so
process.
I wasn't clear on the rule.
Okay. But the legal has come back on this where you vote, example, you vote yes in committee for something, just so it can get out and we can start talking about it. You can sign the jacket or not sign it that day. Just because you voted yes or no doesn't mean you have to stick to your vote. You can always change with new information with regards to signing the jacket and having it come out.
Well, that's,
Okay.
thank you.
So the motion is, so B was sent to legal with a response back by the 25th to ordinance. 10A is a motion to send back to ordinance. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
It goes back to ordinance. B, Committee on Ordinance was referred in order that Section 2-470 be amended to coincide with the community preservation application schedule as follows, and then there's a list. Recommended that it be adopted. Under discussion, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the motion is to pass the first reading.
Second.
This is simply,
Second.
Excuse me, sorry. Motion is to pass the first reading. Under discussion, Councilor Bacon.
so the purpose of this was simply to articulate the schedule so that things would be coming before the city council properly. So it's not changing any of the process, just the schedule.
Okay. So motion is passed first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Motion to pass the second reading.
Motion is passed the second reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Motion that the passage be ordained.
Motion is that the passage be ordained. The clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for it.
Valentin,
Yes.
Hey, do we have a copy of this?
That is it. What is on the agenda is,
No, in the legal form is what I'm asking.
Yes. Right here, Councilmember Gibbon. Do you have a question prior to the vote?
I just, reading this, I don't know if this is what we're voting on.
Section 2-470 schedule. In any given year, the committee shall maintain the following schedule. In March, the committee shall develop and submit its operational administrative budget to the mayor in accordance with section 2-469C. In April, the committee shall make the following proposals. In July, each authority shall appoint a member. With regards to section 2-467, the committee shall meet as necessary to fulfill the required duties, except that the committee shall meet no less than 4 times in a fiscal year. Section 2, ordinances or parts of the ordinance inconsistent herein are hereby repealed. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect on passage.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just also says delete in its entirety. I'm all set.
Where are you seeing that?
Under section 1. Deleting everything except section 1.
So,
And then
yeah,
adding,
section
I'm all set,
1,
I'm all set.
okay.
The law department just keeps me confused.
All right.
I'm good.
So clerk will call the
I
roll.
didn't catch anything out of order. Is there,
No, I think what Councilor McGee is referring to, it says section 1, division 5 entitled Community Preservation Act, Mass 1997. And then underneath that, it says deleting in its entirety, and there's nothing there. Actually, underneath it, it says section 2-470. So whatever it is 2470 is being deleted, and then you're moving on and adding in this new section 247 schedule.
Right, so rather than have to explain substitutions, we just delete the section and then add in its place so they can do a copy and paste into Municode. It just makes life easier.
thank you.
So, no further discussion. The clerk call the roll. If you're voting yes, you're voting for the change.
Valentin.
Yes.
Anderson Burgos. Bartley.
Yes.
Bresnahan. Leahy.
Yes.
LeBron Martinez.
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
McGivern.
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Tomlin. Bacon.
Yes,
9 yeas.
With your vote, you've approved the change. 10C, the Committee on Ordinance was referred that the council adopt an ordinance requiring city council to approve any license agreement for the use of city-owned real property. Recommended that the order be adopted, signed off by Councilor Bacon, Bartley, and Anderson Burgos.
a motion to pass the first reading?
Motion is passed first reading. Our discussion, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Most of you will remember that we undertook to create this ordinance in 2016. It was passed by the body. Subsequent to that, there was an update to procurement ordinances made, and apparently inadvertently an older version was updated, which unintentionally deleted the new portion that we had added relative to licensing. So therefore, we're in the position of needing to put it back, as our intention was never to delete that portion. So we're having to reaffirm the ordinance that we created in 2016 to get it properly in Municode, as I understand it.
Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on that, something that Kevin and I filed a few years ago relative to something that was done at the Geriatric Authority, and as you know, all issues relative to real property have to come through this body. We talked about this at the last meeting, but it bears repeating. Everything whether it's purchasing or disposition. While there was one caveat in the state law, it didn't talk about a license. So our law department said that at the Geriatric Authority, we're not giving a lease to Gondara, we're giving them a license. So we were all a little bit surprised when our law department undermined Mass state law, knowing full well that that's what this body does. But we pass into ordinance now that anything that's even a license, whether, if it's 30 days or more, has to come through the city council. So that's something that this body should be very proud of. It gives us a lot of, a chance to really look at things, really understand what the administration is doing when it makes deals. I mean, 95% of them are going to be great, and we're going to generally be supportive, but there's a certain percentage that maybe we won't support. And this gives us the flexibility to not, whether or not it's a lease, a sale, or a license. And again, we passed this once. I assume we'll pass it again. We passed it once. We had to pass it a second time over a mayoral veto, but like most of his vetoes, they all lose. So hopefully this one will go without a veto, and we can just move it on to law.
Question, I may have missed it.
Sure.
I know the city clerk sent your order and Councilor Jordan's order that was approved via email. Do we have to re-vote on this if it was already passed?
Well, it was the opinion of Attorney Payer from the Law Department that we should, and I think the Assistant Solicitor on hand tonight would verify that. He didn't give it, he gave it to me in a written email that we should, he didn't send a communication to this body, but that's why I filed this second order.
No, and I appreciate that, but I guess my question is, if we voted on something, approved it, overrode a veto and approved it again, it should go into Muni Code as that order. Why do we have to file it again? Councilor Bacon.
So my understanding, based on the communication from Attorney Payer, was because we approved an updated procurement ordinance, which consolidated everything, and in that form, the new license ordinance was not included. It was an inadvertent, as we understand it, situation, but we subsequently approved updated procurement ordinances in which the new ordinance we had approved was not included.
But that's just putting it into the system because it was already approved as a law. It was
Correct.
approved.
Correct, and there's no argument about that, so I'm seeing this as a cleanup. The problem, as I interpreted it from his communication, was that subsequent to approving this law, we updated the procurement ordinance. So because the language wasn't in it, we unintentionally eliminated this from the ordinance by
So-
that action. We didn't catch that it wasn't there, but I guess his point was, since that was a formal action with an unintended consequence, his feeling was we needed to do it in a formal mechanism again.
Well, we never voted not to get rid of it. So I guess my question is,
I
if we
agree
vote
with
on
that.
it, we vote on it tonight and we vote it down. Is it now gone? We no longer have the license ordinance?
My understanding is that is his interpretation
I disagree with the interpretation.
because it's not in the current procurement ordinance as it reads.
I have the copy of the ordinance that was approved
I do
in
too.
this body, everyone voting for it. It was Councilor Bartley, Councilor Jordan's.
I do too.
So to say that it's not law is, fine, it's a glitch, but we don't have to re-vote the law in, you just have to put it in the immunity system.
Reaffirm.
All right, you guys take your chances. I'm
Well,
telling you,
don't-
I disagree with the opinion.
Well, so, if, to defer to the chair, do you see another action that we could take to accomplish making sure this ordinance is in Unicode, because it is not?
From what the clerk sent us, the ordinance was approved by this full body back in 2016. I'll pull up the email again.
Correct.
And voted for. It should be in Unicode. There's no order out there that says remove it from
Correct.
Unicode. None
Correct.
exists. This is irrelevant. I'd like a legal opinion on it. I want to see what case law they're citing. I want to see where they're getting information to say that this is.
Okay, so because this came up, because it's not in Unicode, we were using this as a vehicle to make sure that it is in
The
Unicode.
2016 order requires us to put it in Unicode.
So in that case, it simply then appears that it could have just been done without coming to the city council then?
That is my interpretation. I'd
Well,
like to see.
I would happily defer to the clerk if the clerk and legal says that it can just be put in Muni code.
Counselor McGivern.
A vote like this would open up a can of worms on top of the discussion in front of us this evening. Our actions are not redoable. We cannot reconsider once we adjourn a meeting, any of our actions. It's not even the same city council. There are different members that were not present when this vote was taken. There are new members that were not present when this vote was taken. And I understand the dilemma that the committee was put in front of them, and I don't know the answer, but a vote like this could change a vote, or actually a vote like this should not change the vote of 2016 of that council. And, unless the intention of a new order was to reverse or to delete an order, to delete a law. And to make a vote on something that's already been voted on is just not allowable.
I am happy to defer
Table-
to
why-
minds in the
why-
room. The goal of the committee was to simply reaffirm our actions that we took in 2016, nothing other.
Based on legal
Make a
advice.
motion to table it in order to get clarification. It is seconded, it's no longer discussable. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The item is tabled. 10D.
Well, that shouldn't be on the,
10D
Motion
is
to,
to...
Does have
that this
signatures
is
anyhow.
tabled in committee.
All right, 10D is a motion is to refer back to committee because it's not supposed to be... Well, actually, you can't take it up anyways. There's only one signature, so 10D
Remains in committee.
remains in committee. Back to finance, we did 11A and B, 11C. The Committee on Finance is referred. Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, City Council hereby accept the 2018 Connecticut River CSO Mitigation Grant.
Make a motion to receive, pass the first reading, to accept and approve the
Motion
grant.
is to receive,
Second.
adopt, pass first reading. Under discussion, Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we all know, but for our listening audience, the city is under the Clean Water and River, I can't even talk this evening. The Clean Water Act itself, we are under a mandate to address our CSO issues. CSOs are where we have combined sewer and stormwater being emptied into the Connecticut River. For the most part, we treat it, but we have overflows when there's an excess of a rainstorm or an excess of the ability for the wastewater treatment plant and the addendum to the wastewater treatment plant, which is the catch, what we call the big catch basin. But there are several, actually 20 to 50 projects that need to be done that are still under this mandate. We had Mike McManus in, that he updated us on some of those projects. He updated us on what we are facing. Just a reminder, because we went all through all these numbers when we did the original project, but the Clean Water Act itself can impose a fine on over $100,000 a day if at some point in time we do not satisfy the federal government that we are making the efforts and doing the efforts to correct the mandate, and that means to correct these CSO issues within the city. This grant is $160,000. It's no match. It's a grant that actually, unfortunately, doesn't go directly into one of these projects, but allows the city, allows the DPW wastewater treatment plant to be able to put together a plan, an engineering plan, but a plan that will address our future of how to answer each of these CSO projects. Mike said the most important thing about this grant, the most important thing about the product of this grant is it will give us the time we need to continue to work on the CSO projects that we have to take care of. Therefore, the committee accepted his answers to our questions, accepted his recommendation, and we recommend that the city council accept this grant and to be used the way it was outlined to us and the way it's intended to be used.
Anyone else? Motion is passed the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion to pass the second reading?
Motion is passed the second reading. Clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the grant.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
Bresnahan,
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Unanimous.
With your vote, you approve the grant. 11D from Finance, that the Committee on Finance referred in order in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53, that the council hereby accept the provision of the recycling program grant. Recommended that it be approved, adopted.
Excuse me, Mr. President, make a motion to receive, pass the first reading.
Motion is to
Second.
receive, adopt, pass first reading. Under discussion, Councilor McGivern.
The amount of the, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I'm getting a little, we're on the recycling grant, right?
Yep.
The amount of the can't read my own writing, Councilor President, you know, it's getting bad here.
Attaboy, Counselor.
The amount of this grant is $12,600, but through Mike McManus, we learned some really good news. This grant will be used to purchase these larger cycle bins, and I'll go back to, and I know Councilor Bartley was very instrumental in this, but a lot of city councilors participated in the establishing a revolving fund late last year, but for the purpose of purchasing these bins themselves. This grant will get about 135 of these large blue bins for recycling. Good news is that the revolving fund has gone through its first quarter, and there's enough money in the revolving account to also purchase, or actually I think the DPW has already purchased 120 of these bins. The goal of the committee, the goal of the city council was to eventually be able to have enough of these bins available to all homeowners who wish to use the larger bin. These are the ones that are on wheels. The idea is not just that they're on wheels, but also that they fit more recyclables on the 2-week pickup cycle. Ms. McManus told us that the availability of these bins are on a first-come, first-served basis through the DPW. They also, as they did in the past, are monitoring a household on the amount of recyclables they're putting out each week, and hoping those that have overflowing bins, would be a first priority to get them the larger bins. The reminder that what Mike had told us, not just last week, but the first go-around with the revolving fund is, these things are not, you don't just go out and order them. You have to purchase them with a certain quantity. They do cost a few bucks, and they're on demand across the country. So, Mike has gotten so many in, and he's already placed an order for the next batch. But this is $12,600, which will go towards the purchase of 135 bins.
Anyone else? Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, so it's not just me, it's everybody in this room voted in favor of it. I know Councilor McGivern has advised me over the course of time, and he's right. He's right on this point, is that, having these type of funds, it affects the city budget. But I think in this particular case, I don't mean this as being a pun, but it will pay dividends. I mean, I blasted our prior DPW superintendent more than one occasion, but in this instance, he was right, because Holyoke has a dual stream. Other communities have the single stream. Well, tough luck, because they're paying to have their recycling hauled away. I mean, you read that MMA newsletter. I mean, everybody's getting hammered for, 30, 40, 50, $80 a ton for recycling to have it hauled. Holyoke gets a check. So that's pretty nice, and I think that's because we have the dual stream, and that's something we should be proud of. And having this fund really allows us to expand the recycling program. So I know I've already received calls on this. The new recycling coordinator to replace Tim Price, Jim, I'm blanking his last name right this second, but wonderful gentleman. You see him driving around in the pickup truck all the time. He's got the blue bins. He's been distributing them left and right all over town. So it's out there. Holyoker should be very proud of this effort, and as a, we don't put up the little signs, green community, like Ward 8 does all the time, but Holyoke is a green community, and it's something I think that we can do better, and this is going to help us go a long ways towards that.
Anyone else? Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, just briefly, just wanted to stress the importance of recycling, how we can save money, in the long run, less on disposal costs, and maybe getting a little bit of a check back from our recycling program. And it's important that people get out there and do that. And this is one of the things that comes back to us in the community. But I just want to stress that people, make a better effort to use the recycling bins on a bi-weekly basis.
No further discussion. Motion is to pass the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Pass the second reading?
Motion is passed the second reading. Clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the $12,600 grant.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson, Burgos.
Yes.
Bartley. Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Unanimous.
With your vote, you approve the grant.
Make a motion to suspend rules to take 11E and 11F together.
Motion is to
Second.
take 11E and 11F together. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 11E is on finances referred that $83.33 be authorized from Personnel Department, Medical Claims, Police and Fire for appropriations in fiscal year 2019 for services rendered in 2018. And 11F is that $160 be authorized from Personnel Department advertising appropriations for fiscal year 2019 for services rendered in 2018. Recommended that they both be adopted.
Make a motion to pass the first reading on each of them.
Motion is receive, adopt, pass first reading. Our discussion, Councilor McGivern.
This is our Personnel Department, our new director, Hector Casquillo, he did not come into the committee meeting, and I thank the committee for both working off an email and working off a conversation he had with them. The similarity in both of these are two bills that weren't paid at the end of the fiscal year. It was just an inadvertent mistake made with the changeover from one director, Kim Counter, leaving and one director coming in, Hector, and they caught it when it was too late to get it in front of us to pay it. The $83, the most important question besides it's a bill last year, was why it was a bill that went to an actual employee for workman's comp. Typically, that's supposed to go through other channels, but it happens more often than not. The research was done. Hector assured me that it was a legitimate workman's comp claim. We did not get into the detail of the employee's name, but it was, it was something that was both by by Hector and his department and by the Workman's Comp Authority itself, committee. There also, the 160 is the same thing, it just didn't get paid. That was our advertising for the auditor positions that we're interviewing tomorrow evening. And it was just inadvertently not paid last year, just asking permission to pay for it this year. Committee recommends that we do pay for both of these bills this year.
No further discussion. Motion is passed the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Pass the second reading?
Motion is passed the second reading. Clerk call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting to pass both the $83 and $160.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson, Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
LeBron Martinez. Yes. McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Unanimous.
With your vote, you approve the paying of the bills. 11H, Committee on Finance to refer an order that hereby be appropriated $4,288 from social worker to 4 different areas. Recommended that be adopted.
Make a motion to receive to pass the first reading.
Motion is receive, adopt, pass first reading. Our discussion, Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is out of the Council on Aging budget. Just a reference, a reminder that back in August, in our August Midsummer Nightmare meeting, we did receive a collective bargaining agreement with the local 1459 Council on Aging, and we did receive the what was at that time was, isn't at this time, was a negotiated bargaining agreement, which includes some salary increases and some monetary gains by the employees at the Council on Aging. Finance Committee originally took it up on August 29th. Unfortunately, at that time, the committee, there was no one available to answer our questions. We did review last week on the 12th on the contract itself. The director could not come in last week, but I'll just note that we're referring it back to the committee because in August, we didn't have the appropriation that we do have now before us, and it comes out of their budget, not out of free cash, and obviously not out of stabilization. Highlights of the contract itself, July 1st, 2018, it's a 1.5% increase. July 1st, 2019, it's a 2% increase. And July 1st, 2020, it's an additional 2% increase. There's some additional language that has a monetary help with the people who work in the kitchen at the Council on Aging, where the $50 for their clothing allowance is changed to $75. That's on, if you haven't seen it or have it in front of you, that's on page 2. And there also was one other, the final page of the contract itself, where there's an adjustment of 25 cents per hour to the base salary for the kitchen supervisor grade, upwards to 50 cents per hour adjustment. Each of these items have an impact by passing the appropriation for 2 or 3 years out. By passing the appropriation here, it takes care of the current year and gives us the right to ratify the appropriation that would ratify the contract itself. The committee's recommendation is to adopt the transfer and to approve this contract for the Council on Aging employees.
There's no further discussion. Motion is to pass the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is to pass the second reading.
Pass the second reading.
If you vote yeah, the clerk call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the transfer.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Unanimous.
With your vote, you approve the transfer. 11I, Committee on Finance referred appropriation of $3,000 from plumbing inspector to plumbing inspections. Recommend that be adopted.
Make a motion to pass the first reading.
Second.
Motion is receive, adopt, pass first reading. Under discussion?
Mr. President, real quick, the $3,000 from plumbing inspector goes when that position was not filled. It has been filled more recently than in the beginning of the fiscal year. The reason it goes from the salary into the plumbing inspections is even though the building department did not have a plumbing inspectors, obviously those inspections for permits still had to be done. So what the building department does, and most departments do here, is we contract out and either share services with another community and pay someone per diem, or find someone that is qualified and pay them per diem. So this transfer was to cover what happened during a period of time when the position was not filled. Chair, the committee recommends that the appropriation be adopted.
There's no further discussion. A motion is to pass the first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Motion to pass the second reading.
Motion is to pass the second reading. Clerk call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the transfer.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
Bresnahan.
Yes.
Leahy, LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
With your vote, you approve the transfer. 11J, Committee on Finance referred a petition for a secondhand license for 247 Main Street. Recommend that be approved.
Make a motion that we grant the petition to Mr. Diego Munez Torres.
Motion is
Second.
to receive and adopt and grant the secondhand license. Under discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Munez Torres was present with the committee. Also present with him was the owner of the building at 247 Main Street. It's a building that does house three medium-sized businesses. Mr. Muniz Torres is proposing that he be allowed to operate under a secondhand license. What he deals in is cell phones, video games, electronics, things of that nature. What he does is takes them in, and then after the appropriate waiting period, he resells them, and that's the way his business operates. He answers all the committee's questions. He was fully aware of his responsibility with the police department to not only keep a log, but to have a camera to take a copy of a person's license or appropriate ID, a video camera, and a picture of the person who is turning the item in, and at all times have the log open and for review by the police department, detective bureau, or anyone in the police department if there's any reported stolen licenses. The waiting period, I don't know if another member of the committee can remind me, I think is 60 days. But Mr. Muniz Torres was well aware of, even without the committee asking him questions, of his responsibility there. We recommend, I believe you have a sign-off from all taxes and municipal utility bills, and the committee does recommend that the secondhand petition license be granted.
You are correct, everything is signed off on regarding taxes. There's no further discussion. We don't have to do a roll call, it's just approving the license.
Yeah.
So a motion is to receive and approve the secondhand license. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Approved. 11K from Finance referred appropriation of $1,050 from Plumbing and Gas Inspector to Building Commissioner. Motion is to adopt.
Motion to pass the first reading.
Motion is to
Second.
receive, adopt, pass first reading. Our discussion, Councilor McGee.
Yes, our building, and I think I failed to mention it, but on 11I, our building, Damien Cody, our building inspector, department inspector, was present for both items. This item is a transfer from plumbing and gas inspector, that same position that was not filled in the beginning part of the year. It is filled now, but this is excess money in that line item. It goes into a line item for the building commissioner's salary itself. During the budget process, we had a lengthy discussion about the salary and an MOU that was adopted with the professional association, professional department heads association with the city itself. There was a cut in that MOU that did cut out an salary increase that is part of the MOU, but also, and I remember at the time that we were discussing this in the budget hearings, the city solicitor, informed us that on top of that salary increase, which was the cut, this is an ongoing COLA, cost of living increase itself. The MOU was originally initiated in 2016, and we did adopt a budget that gave the COLA to Mr. Cody. And this part is to correct what I believe, and is that we cannot cut from the budget because we approved the MOU in 2016 when we did the original. It was part of the increase last year, and it's part of this increase. And the committee, after listening to Mr. Cody and from prior knowledge, is recommending that this transfer be adopted.
Councilor Bacon.
I just have a question. So is this representing the COLA?
This is the COLA only.
Okay. Thank you.
No further discussion. Motion is passed first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion would be to pass
Pass
the second reading. The seconded. Clerk will call the roll. If you vote yes, you're voting for the transfer.
Valentin,
Yes.
Anderson Burgos,
Yes.
Bartley,
Yes.
Bresnahan,
Yes.
Leahy, LeBron Martinez,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
McGivern,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon.
Yes.
Unanimous.
With your vote, you approve the transfer. 11L was done. 11M, Committee on Finance referred a communication from the Hoyo. Do we do M already?
Did it?
Yeah, so M is done as well. So this is now moving on to 14A from Committee on DGNR.
Mr. President, we haven't done 11M yet.
No, okay.
No.
Where's,
We did something similar out of DGR, but this is, and Councilor Bartley cited some things that came up again, but there's more to it than just a little bit more to it than just a DGR report. I can do it very quickly.
all right, so motion, so it's 11M is on the board. Committee on Finance referred in order that communication from Hoyoke Waterworks regarding information meeting with the city council to discuss various matters concerning the Hoyoke Waterworks, recommended that it be complied with.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, I'll do it real quick, but be happy to what I think is a very important part of our future, be able to answer as many questions as possible. On your desk, everybody should have a packet from the Hoyoke Waterworks, the capital planning projects for 2018. It's a in-depth study of what's going on in the water department and future, immediate and future needs. We had our water commissioners in. We had Mr. David Conti, the executive director, the superintendent of the waterworks himself. After a brief introduction, especially with our newest water commission, who, I mean, we're very blessed to have, two water commissioners that have over 30 years experience. Mr. Conti, who unfortunately has 30 years of experience and has a light at the end of his tunnel, which we don't want to discuss, because I said we might shut that light off if he thinks he's pulling those retirement papers too quick. But we did have a discussion. Councilor Sullivan and I had gone to a water commission meeting a couple of months ago, and we were kind of briefed on this with a lot of things that are going on. This was a response to a communication that was received and tabled in the committee on behalf of the water department request itself to have this discussion. Not to confuse it with what the DGR did, because it does overlap. And by the way, that was an excellent report by DGR, and I fully agree that we need to get a committee together to study Whiting Street and to understand that, we can't wait 40 or 50 years to sell water to someone. We need to get some revenue out of the land that the city is responsible. And this report, along with a lot of other items, leads into what do we mean by responsibility. Very quickly, the report highlights a number of issues that the water department is suggesting that we bond for. Now, bonding would be under the capacity of the city to bond, but because there's a user fee for the water department, it is put into a different category. And if we were to get to that point, we would get a much more detailed explanation from our bond counsel and from our treasurer. And I'm sure the mayor's office is fully aware of that if they do go forward with this. But the highlights of this are, most of us have taken the tour, the in-city tour. Some of the things that need to be done are those water tanks need to be both repainted and refurbished so that they are in tip-top shape. Just by looking at them, you can tell the pictures on this that there is a problem. Councilor Bartley's committee talked about the Whiting Street Dam, the spillway. That is one of the top priorities and one of the top expenses of what they're proposing to bond for, regardless of what level of water we keep there and what use we do down the road. It's decommission that, and to drain that completely would probably be actually more expensive than to fix the spillway and necessary to make some repairs to the dam itself. We also need to take a look at out in Tycomedy, I always call it the grade house or whatever, they have a different name for it itself, but that is old. I think those of us that took that tour a couple of years ago understand that there's a need to replace, not to replace that, but to work on it immediately. And there's also a need for the West Hoyoke, Councilor Bacon probably is more familiar with this than I am, but there's a concrete storage tank in West Hoyoke. I think it's towards the end of Appermont Highway, and that needs some work immediately too. Those are some of the top projects, but as Councilor Bartley in his report alluded, your following pages are what we do on an ongoing basis, but these are in yellow are high priority needs of new pipelines. We had a show and tell thanks to Councilor Sullivan at the Finance Committee meeting I hope we're not going to have it this evening because some people couldn't sleep that night. But he somehow brought a section of a 100-year-old pipe and put it on top of the table in front of us here.
We're gonna do it
to
again.
Show us, I guess we're going to do it again, to show
Bring it
us
out.
what water goes through. And we all shared a couple stories about this. Well, Councilor Sullivan's bringing out that 100-year-old pipe. Mr. Conti was quickly telling us what they do to treat this pipe to make it, the water going through it safe, and to make sure that the water's not only treated, but there's a certain treatment that adheres to this pipe itself, and that corrosion doesn't get into the water. And I shared with there was a representative from Ty and Bond, and I shared with her that 30 years ago, Mr. Sheridan sat in the same chair and told me, you know, our water is great, Joe, but when he lived, I was familiar with his family. He lived near me. I lived on Beach Street. He lived on Essex Street, where his family grew up. He said, in the morning, just run the water a little bit and you'll be fine. And now I understand why he was talking about running the water in the morning, because flowing water goes through this quickly and there's no issues. But I think the trust we have in Mr. Conti, the tremendous experience we have in our commission, our newest commission worked for the city of Springfield for 28 years, I believe, and brings a level of experience to that position that complements the two sitting and the commissioner that we lost, but also the two sitting commissioners. The recommendation, I believe, Mr. President, is that the order's been complied with. At this point in time, the commissioners will meet with the mayor, will meet with with bond council and talk about trying to prioritize the list, but talk about where financially prioritizing, we might be able to look at bonding for some of these projects. There is an ongoing replacement of pipes, but it will never reach the level of what the need is in terms of demand of the older pipes. That's the recommendation of the committee, and I thank you for listening.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you. As Councilor McGivern said, we did have Mr. Conti, Mr. Nadorf, and Mr. Harbalus in, and it was a fantastic meeting, along with the representative from Ty and Bond. You know, besides the people, the city of Holyoke, the best asset that we have is our water. You know, owning 5 different reservoirs is a wealth that other communities just don't have. We just finished up paying a bond of $20 million or so. It's time for us to reinvest in our infrastructure, especially the water department. They gave us a list, and there's 22 dire need projects that we need to do, and some of these projects are just. I mean, if you look at the pipe that Mike Sullivan brought in, there's pipes throughout the city that are similar to this, if not worse. And if a pipe collapses, that could cause a major sinkhole, and God forbid somebody's driving over that, it would be an awful thing. So I'm all in support of the water department. These commissioners, they know this project, or they know this business like the back of their hands, and Mr. Conti as well. So I'm certainly going to support it. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
And what I need everybody in this room and the public in general to understand is what you're looking at there, that's a 100-plus-year-old pipe. That pipe was probably installed in the late 1800s. It's cast iron. What you see inside of it, that growth, it doesn't affect the quality of our water. It's nothing to be afraid of drinking. It's a best thing, it's called tuberculation. The best thing you can compare it to is a barnacle on a ship. The problem is where you've got an 8-inch main, you've only got a 6-inch main. And where you've got a 6-inch main, you've got a 4-inch main. And in some of them, it could be worse. So if you've got a company trying to do development in this city and they have a need for water, they're not getting the flow that they think they're getting when they connect up to the system. If you've got a fire hydrant, and this is where it becomes a public safety issue as well, you've got that in there, you're not getting the flow out of the hydrants that you expect either. Modern pipes are, this is cast iron, and not to belabor it, the modern pipes are ductile. And as you replace it, they're not, they don't have this kind of issues going forward. So this is a huge infrastructure problem in the city, and something that has to be undertaken. It's just the time has come. So,
No further discussion. The motion is that it's been complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 14A from Committee on Development and Government Relations, to whom is referred an order communication from Alicia Zoller, Office of Community Development, regarding the fiscal year 2017 annual reprogramming number 2 of Community Block Grant. Have considered the same and recommended that the annual reprogramming of the CDBG funds be approved. Signed off by Bartley, Valentin, and Tallman.
Motion that the letter be received.
Motion is to receive. Under discussion.
Limited, Mr. President. This is a letter that we received from the CDBG department head. I wasn't able to take this up in the timely fashion that her letter recommended, but that's because she sent it to me kind of late in the game. They sent it in August. I mean, it's not her fault. It's just the way the letter came. And it's reprogramming funds that's part of CDBG world. And we reviewed it. It wasn't a unanimous vote, but the majority of the committee approved it.
Anyone else? Motion is to receive and adopt, or just receive?
Motion is received.
Motion is receive. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 14B and C were done. There was no reports from Charter and Rules or Joint Committee on Schools. Motions and orders. 17 from Anderson Burgos. Order that the handicap space at Ivy Ave be...
I'd like to package 17 and 18 and send to DPW.
Motion is to take up 17 and 18 as a package. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So the first one is Ivy Ave, 8 Ivy Ave to locate on the east side of the street, 90 feet north of Dwight Street. And 18 is order that the handicap sign be placed in front of 184 Sergeant Street. So to ordinance for both?
Yep.
So 17, 18 to ordinance. All those in favor? All
Aye.
opposed?
You got a copy to
A copy to
Disability.
Disability Committee. 19 from Councilor Bartley. And
DGR, please.
What?
Second.
What was that? I missed that.
DGR.
DGNR. So 19 is the City Council invite in the state delegation, referred to DGNR. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 20 from Councilor Bartley, quality of life issues.
Yeah, you could just there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I put them all together, Mr. President. We'd be here all night. Motion is to refer, to receive, adopt, and refer to the Department of strike that. Refer to the Public Safety Committee with a copy to DPW, because these are just outstanding and they never get done.
So it's trees, sidewalks, et cetera, berms, therefore send to public safety with a copy to DPW.
Yeah, can I just point out one, Mr. President?
Yeah.
Just in letter D, I really want the Ward 1 and Ward 2 counselor to really look at that as well, because it really kind of, it's really a public safety hazard when I've seen for years mothers with strollers walking in the middle of a highway, that's High Street and South Street, because there's no sidewalk there. So they're walking up towards to go shopping at the South Street Shopping Plaza. And I've repeatedly asked to see if we can get CDBG funds, which is they're used for, instead of going to whatever they're going for we could use them for a sidewalk for this area. Again, these are our most vulnerable citizens going up to Save a Lot or going shopping or going where the stores are, they're mod low-income stores at South Street Shopping Plaza, because this is where they want to go. Well, they have no other way to get there but to walk back up the hill, and they're walking in the middle of a street. I've said this for 4 years. It goes nowhere. So I'm hopeful that the Ward 1 counselor will really get behind this, ask the mayor, and we can maybe get into a CDBG potential procurement.
All right,
Thank you.
so motion is to send to public safety a copy of DPW. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 21 from Councilor LeBron Martinez, that a handicap sign be placed at 130 Cabot Street. To ordinance with a copy.
Disability.
Okay, copy of the disability. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 22 from Counselor McGee, that the city council meeting for November 6th be rescheduled due to the general election on such day.
I'll make a motion, remove it to November 7th.
Motion is to move it to November 7th. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? November 7th.
7 o'clock.
23 from Counselor McGee, that the city council give a proclamation to John J. Driscoll, Attorney Driscoll, as he is the recipient of the Dwight Award. Make a motion to receive and adopt.
Second.
Yeah, I can add my name to that.
And whoever wants to add their name.
And everybody.
Everyone?
Everybody.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I believe that's in October. I'll get you guys the date for that. 24 from Counselor McGivern, that $29,219.10 from senior election clerk to assistant registry of voters to $29,219.10. Finance?
Receive finance.
It's finance. All those in favor? All those opposed? There's no more late files because we already took them up. Motion would be to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?